Prynhawn da i chi gyd. Gobeithio eich bod chi gyd yn cadw'n dda, a diolch yn fawr i chi am ymuno gyda ni ar gyfer ein webinar heddi i'ch gefnogi i baratoi i gyflwyno'r gymhwyster dilyniant. Good afternoon to you all. Hope you're keeping well, and thank you very much for joining our webinar to prepare to deliver the progression qualification. Rydym dal yn gweithio adre, felly ymddeiriadau ymlaen llaw am unrhyw sŵn yn y cefndir ac unrhyw oedi yn y sleidiau. We are all still working from home, therefore I apologise in advance for any background noise and any delay in the slides. Fe fyddwch yn derbyn copi o'r pwynt pŵer a recordiad o'r webinar yn ogystal â thystysgrif i gadarnhau eich presenoldeb ar ôl y webinar. Fe gallwch ddod o hyd i bob recordiad o'n gwebinarau blaenorol ar ein gwefan Sgiliau i Gymru. Gallwch hefyd gofrestru ar gyfer y gwebinarau sydd i ddod ar y wefan hefyd. You will receive an email with a copy of the PowerPoint, the recording of this webinar, and a certificate of attendance after this webinar. You can access the recordings to all previous webinars and register for upcoming webinars on our Skills for Wales website. Fe fyddwch yn derbyn e-bost cyn diwedd y webinar gyda linc i'n harolwg. Byddem ddiolchgar iawn petaech chi'n cymryd yr amser i lenwi ein harolwg, gan bod eich adborth yn werthfawr iawn i ni. You will receive an email before the session ends with a link to a survey. We would be very grateful if you could take the time to fill in this survey, as your feedback is very valuable to us. Dyma beth fyddwn ni'n trafod heddi. Fyddwn ni'n trafod yn fras pam y trawsnewid yma o fewn y cymwysterau. Fe fyddwn yn edrych ar gynnwys y gymhwyster dilyniant, gan edrych ar strwythur yr unedau a chrynodeb o'r asesiadau. Fe fyddwn yn edrych ar adnoddau dysgu sydd ar gael i chi, yna mynd trwy'r camau nesaf, gan edrych ar y daith gymeradwyo ac hefyd y trefniadau trosiannol. Ac ar y diwedd y fydd yna gyfle i chi ofyn unrhyw gwestiynau i ni. Plis manteisiwch ar y cyfle yma gan roi eich cwestiynau yn y tab cwestiynau sydd ar y llaw dde o'ch sgrin yn ystod y cyflwyniad. Fe fydd y cyflwyniad yn para tua hanner awr, gan roi ddigon amser i chi gael y cyfle i ofyn cwestiynau i'n panelwyr. This is what we'll be discussing. We'll briefly mention why the transformation of these qualifications have happened. We will take a look at the content of the progression qualification and a look at the structure of the unit and the summary of the assessments. Then we'll then show you the learning resources that are available for you. Then we will discuss the next steps with you, along with the approval journey and the transitions arrangements. And then we will take a look at the end, there will be an opportunity for you to ask us any questions. Please type in any questions that you may have in the questions tab on the right-hand side of your screen during the presentation. The presentation will last around half an hour, allowing plenty of time for you to ask us any questions. Felly dyma i chi yn panelwyr. Here are our panelists today. We have David Pye, who's the Technical Advisor for Building Services at City and Guilds. We have Ian Roberts, who's the Technical Advisor for Construction at City and Guilds. Jason Marsland, who's the Plumbing and Heating Product Specialist at EAL. We have Jason Howe, who's the Technical Advisor for Construction at City and Guilds, and myself, Angharad Lloyd-Bainan, I'm the Policy, Stakeholder and Partnerships Manager for City and Guilds. Felly pam y trawsnewid? Why the transformation? Back in February 2018, Qualifications Wales published the Building the Future report, which was a sector review of the qualifications and the qualification system in construction and the built environment in Wales. Some of the Qualification Wales's findings were that they were inconsistent assessment practice, some areas of learning not effectively assessed, learners needed to deal with a range of tasks and be able to problem solve, the qualifications weren't meeting skills needs of Wales, there was a need to reduce the complexity of the system, there was also a need to improve coherence with clear pathways, and the progression routes needed to be clear through framework and onto work or higher education. Felly nod y cymwysterau yma, so the roles, the aims of these new qualifications. Felly mae'r rhaid i'r cymwyster hyn fod yn ddylus, yn ddibynadwy, yn dangos hyblygrwydd, yr gallu i gefnogi, a chynllunio I fod yn hyblyg I ganiatáu y darparwyr amserlu eu raglen gyflawni eu hunain. The aim of these new qualifications is to ensure validity, reliability, to be flexible and be able to manage them easy, to be able to support and make tutors, assessors roles more manageable, and planning to be flexible to allow providers to schedule own programme of delivery. Felly mae'r cynnwys wedi cael ei ddatblygu ar y cyd â nifer o randdeiliaid, fel ymgynghorwyr technegol, gweithgorau fforymau technegol, ymarferwyr presennol, gan gynnwys y diwydiant, gan gynnwys contractwyr micro, bychan, canolig a mawr ledled y sector, a mae hyn I gyd trwy gytundeb Cymwysterau Cymru. Mae'r cymwysterau newydd yma wedi gynhyrchu gan eich cyfoedion, pobl sydd â phrofiad o gyflawni cymwysterau adeiladu a pheiriannau gwasanaethau adeiladu mwyn datblygu cynnwys, adnoddau dysgu ac asesiadau o safon uchel. The content has been developed in conjunction with a number of stakeholders, such as technical consultants, technical working groups and forums, current practitioners, industry, including micro, small, medium and large contractors across the sector, and all this has been done with agreement through Qualifications Wales. So these qualifications have been produced by your peers, people with experience of delivering construction and building services engineering qualifications to develop high quality content, learning resources and assessments. On this slide, you can see how a learner can progress from a GCSE in the built environment right the way up to a level 3 apprenticeship. This slide also shows which awarding body is responsible for which qualification. And the webinar today will focus on the progression qualification, which went live for first teaching in September 2021. On this next slide, there's an overview of questions that you may have. As I mentioned earlier, you will be receiving a copy of this presentation, if I won't go through this slide with you. And on this next slide, it just shows the different journey a learner could take starting from September. So there could be the option of doing the foundation or a broad level 1, or the core and apprenticeship, and then the learner then, depending on what they've done in their first year, can move on to the progression or apprenticeship or foundation. Hoffwn nawr eich trosglwyddo I Jason a fydd yn eich tywysg trwy y sleidiau nesaf. I would now like to pass you over to Jason, who will take you through the next few slides. Diolch.
Thank you, Anne-Harriet, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to give an overview of the qualification and the unit structures. Next slide, please. So now we've got the 3 qualifications on the screen. The foundation focuses on 2 trades, the progression focuses on 1 trade, and then we've got the level 3, which takes the main trade you've got through an apprenticeship. Now, within progression, we do bricklaying, architectural joinery, site carpentry, timber frame erection, painter, solid plastering, dry lining, roof slater and tiler, civil operations groundworks, and then for the BSc we have plumbing and heating and electrotechnical. Now at level 3, that contains all the ones we've just been through, but also has plant operations, wall and floor tiling for construction, and for the BSc it has H&V, craftsperson and installer. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to give you a quick look at how the qualification's made up. We have 3 core units and then 1 optional trade specific pathway, and that is the same for both the construction and building services. Next slide, please. Okay, this one now we've got a construction qualification. The top 3 are the core units, and those in black are the trade specific. So for the core units, we have employment and employability in the construction sector, changing practices over time, and planning and evaluating work in the construction sector in Wales. Next slide, please. Again, this now is from the BSc. So we have the 3 core units at the top, and then those in black are the trade specific. So again, we have employment and employability in the building services engineering sector, changing practices over time, planning and evaluating work in the building services engineering sector. These core units are the same for both construction and BSc. The main difference is within construction, they will have a bias towards construction, and likewise in building services, it will have a bias towards building services. And then any nuances within the trades can be picked up there. Next slide, please. In this slide, I just want to really break down the guided learning hours. So we have 540 guided learning hours total. The core units make up 100 guided learning hours. The pathways, 378, and the assessments, 62 guided learning hours. Now we then take that over into the total qualification time, which has 600 hours. So therefore there is an expectation that the learner will be doing self-study, preparing, research and things like that for this qualification. Next slide, please. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to look at the unit structure. If you've done the foundation before, you're running the foundation, you'll be familiar with the layout and the setup of them. We've kept it the same across all of them. So that's a foundation, progression, and level 3. So on this one now, you can see the units are made up of learning outcomes, assessment criteria, and range. If you've been delivering City and Guilds or EAL qualifications, you'll be familiar with this layout. And what we've got, the learning outcomes, they have the high-level chunks of related knowledge, skills, setting out what a learner should understand and be able to do following the teaching and learning. The criteria breaks down that learning outcome into smaller areas to be covered, and then the range gives the breadth required for that specific criteria. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm just going to run through now how they look and how they will feel to you when you start using these documents. So what we have, this is a generic unit, one of the core ones. So we have the unit and title at the top. We have the guided learning hours. Then we'll have a brief description of what that unit's about, followed by a list of the learning outcomes. Next slide, please. As we then move into the unit, what we then get, we get the learning outcomes, criteria, the range, and then the delivery outcome, depth of content. So as we can see from there, know the changes in construction methods over time. The criteria then, pre-1990, 21st century, and then if we look at the range under the 2.1, you can see there how it's expanding on the criteria. Then what we've got the depth of content at the bottom, which gives more detailed context of what the learner should cover and the depth of coverage we're expecting you to do on that one. Next slide, please. And again, what we've got here, it's just going back, this is a trade-specific unit, and this is giving you a feel for those, that they will look the same. So we've got the unit and title, guided learning hours, a brief description, list of the learning outcomes, and again, next slide, please. And on this one, you can see how it builds up on there. So that is how the units are put together and how you will get them and how they will feel. Next slide, please. And on this slide, I'd like you to pass you over to Jason, how he's going to go through the next few slides with you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jason. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, so we're going to talk through the next few slides and look at the assessments that will be contained. So with regards to the progression, that's assessed using 3 methods. So we have the on-screen assessment, which is externally set and externally marked, and that has a weighting of 20%. Then we have the practical project. Again, it's externally set, but this time internally marked by you guys, and that has a weighting of 60%. And then you have the guided discussion, which is again externally set, but internally marked, and that again has a weighting of 20%. And the practical project and the guided discussions again will be externally quality assured also. So the weighting of these programs is aligned so that learners, obviously with the hands-on practical experience that they'll be able to undertake and learn within your centres, they'll be able to demonstrate that through the practical projects. All of the assessment packs are on the Skills for Wales website, and I would really advise and encourage that you pay a visit to the website, download the assessment packs, and have a good look at the detail that is in them, as they are very, very supportive. Next slide, please, Ian. Thank you. So for each pathway, with regards to the on-screen assessments as shown on the top of the 4 boxes there, this will be covering the 3 core units in construction and a 70 minutes long, containing 45 questions for construction. And for the BSc, it is 50 questions and it's 75 minutes long. And it is recommended that this is taken prior to the practical project, but it isn't a necessity. But again, with regards to sequencing, it is advisable. Then you've got the practical project for each trade area. And this is made up of 3 tasks, and that requires the learner to do 3 key elements, and that's plan, perform, and evaluate. And it's graded pass to distinction. And the practical project must be taken prior to the guided discussion. The guided discussion is again for each individual pathway, and it contains 2 parts, including the learner's reflection on the practical project, and then it goes into, and this method of assessment is externally set as previously mentioned and internally marked. The guided discussion can only take place though once the practical project has been complete. The health and safety assessment, although not part of the qualification and isn't mandatory, it is to allow the learner to move forward in readiness for them to carry out their CSCS health and safety tests to gain those CSCS cards that they'll need for industry. This can be taken at any part or at any stage during the assessment process, or learners may have taken this whilst working towards the foundation qualification. But all of the content that's required to be covered for that health and safety assessment is contained within the progression qualification. Next slide, please, Ian. So here we have a range of the on-screen assessment questions that learners will be facing. The on-screen assessment will contain a range of different question types. There are some interactive elements that include clicking on images to select the appropriate area, drag and drop into a correct order, or selecting 1 from 4 options, i.e. multi-choice. So the questions on the screen there, they're just a sample of what's related to the solid plastering. So the question top left is a drag and drop, top right is question 2, which is matching tool types to finishes to be applied, and question 3 is a 1 from 4 option, which is a multi-choice question. In construction, as we mentioned previously, there's 45 multi-choice questions in total, and the learner will have 70 minutes to complete. In BSc, there'll be 50 questions, and again, 75 minutes to complete. And again, this test can be taken at any stage during the assessment process, although it is recommended as a sequencing process that it is taken prior to the practical project and guided discussion. Next slide, please, Ian. So with regards to the practical project, that's made up of 3 tasks that require the learner, as previously mentioned, to show their planning, their performing and their evaluation skills. And this is relating to the trade that the learner has been working towards. Remember that the project is externally set, but it is internally marked and externally verified, and this must be taken prior to the guided discussion. The time allocated is 60 hours in total, and that's broken down as shown on the screen there. 14 hours for planning, 40 hours for performance, and then 6 hours for evaluation. And the assessors will use the practical project grading table within the assessment pack to calculate and provide provisional grades for each learner. Notification of this provisional grade will be given to the learner within 1 week of the completed assessment. Next slide, please, Ian. So just to sort of summarise everything we've just really covered, the on-screen assessments, although we've covered in previous slides, is externally set and automatically marked, and you will receive those results on that same day. Following the completion of the practical project, which we've also covered, you will be required to complete the guided discussion, and that, as previously mentioned, will consist of 2 parts, but it will be completed in 1 time sitting. It'll allow the learner to reflect on the tasks that they've undertaken in the practical, but it will also allow them to explore their knowledge and understanding of the industry, including the self-employment section of their chosen trade. The method of assessment is internally marked, externally verified, and will last for approximately 40 minutes. Provisional grades for the practical project and guided discussion must be provided to learners within 1 week of the completion of each assessment. And really, guidance should be given around the provisional nature of these results, with recognition that they will have to undergo IQA and EQA activities, and the final grade and qualification graded by City and Guilds for construction and EAL for BSc. With regards to resubmissions and resit of assessment, if a learner fails to successfully achieve a pass grade in any of the assessments, then they are permitted to resit or resubmit. And again, more information of this can be found on the in the assessment packs, which are located on the Skills for Wales website. I'd now like to pass you over to my colleague David Pye, who's going to take you through the next section. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jason. Welcome everybody to this webinar. If there's anything we've gone over there that you'd still like clarity on, or you'd like us to cover again, then please just drop a note in the chat or the questions tab, and we can always go back and explain things again at the end. We've got time built in for questions, but we'll work through the next few slides, please. So often centres need to promote the changes to employers, to parents, and to prospective learners. So to support with your own promotional literature and to help centres update their stakeholders, there is an example prospectus on the resources website page. So this includes much of the information you typically find in a prospectus from a centre. You can copy sections from this, put this information into your own documents. It just helps you create that content. There's explanations as to what the qualifications are. It's in English and Welsh. So it's a really good, useful resource. So please tap into that and use that to support your stakeholders and some of your events. We also have a resources document. This is really useful as a high level quick guide to the type of resources that you will require. But please look in the handbooks for your qualifications for the detail. We always push looking at the handbooks because very often people will skip that and look at other documents where all the base and important information is in your handbooks. Thank you. Next slide, please, Ian. So here we have the delivery planner. So many of you should be familiar with this from previous webinars and from using them to support delivery of the foundation qualification. The delivery planner is fully adaptable and equally as useful for delivering the other qualifications such as these level 3s. Please allow time to consider your delivery and the timings. And if you wish to use this document, please feel free to share your thoughts and plans with us. If you'd like us to have a glance and give you some feedback or just have a chat around it. So you can see an exemplar there on the screen. Next slide, please, Ian. So just to point out, really, we've got further CPD materials such as YouTube video links, and we also issue a quarterly newsletter. In addition to that, we've got these third-party resources which are on the Skills for Wales website, and you'll find access to various other support material and links to third-party websites with guidance for tutors, support for delivery. So please take your time to familiarise yourselves with a lot of these different links and these different documents that we're talking about on this webinar. I know it can be hard when you're listening in to think, well, where's that? Where do I go and find this? Probably just give yourself a bit of time to have a look around the website and become familiar. And if you're having difficulty finding anything, drop us an email and we'll support you with that. Next slide, please, Ian. So under the Tutor Resources tab on the Skills for Wales website, we have various support material for learners and tutors. No doubt you're familiar with much of this and it's typical presentations and worksheets that you've probably used before. And as you can see, these are quite visual with various diagrams and tables to support learning. So again, please access that. There's a lot of very good material available. Next slide, please, Ian. As previously promoted, we have a suite of sector books from Hodder Education. This is to support the new suite of qualifications that Hodder have, or in addition to the new foundation books, they've also created 3 mapping documents from the current textbooks into the new qualifications. If you'd like more information about those, if you'd like to see those, Thomas Stotter, please contact Thomas. Really helpful and supportive person. His email is on the slide there, so it's thomas.stotter@hoddereducation.co.uk. Some really good textbooks, good mapping documents, e-boost, electronic books, various. It's not just paper-based textbooks. There's a lot of support material for everyone there. Thank you, Ian. So now we'll have an update and we'll go through some of the next steps as we commence with the centre approval journey. So here we can see the centre approval actually commenced in January 2021 with the foundation and the progression, and now closely followed by the level 3 qualification. Provided you haven't already gained centre approval, the following slides should help you with a broad overview of how to claim your approval. The next slide, please. As we're all aware, these are brand new qualifications, and an online application, an offline, application has to be completed, if not already done so. And this is available in the Become a Centre section of the Skills for Wales website. And it's for all the qualifications for both awarding bodies. So centres only need to complete one application. On completion, it should be forwarded to skillsforwales.quality@Sitting or the associated email address. This section also contains a centre FAQs, which is really helpful. Next slide, please, Ian. Centres can expect a decision about the approval within 30 working days of receipt of the application. A quick note, you will require separate approvals. These must be submitted for sub-centres. So a quick note there. A note about IQA, it comes up quite a bit when we're chatting. You will have to have a fresh look at your IQA and consider it and come up with a new rationale, but you'll already have your procedures and practices and a lot of your documentation already in place for previous qualifications. So it shouldn't be a lot of work just to slightly adapt and tweak to meet the requirements of these new qualifications. The next slide, please, Ian. So, learner journeys. As some of you are well on the way to delivering the foundation qualification, you can see from this slide the typical learner journey. Should a learner be successful in gaining employment, they may enter direct into an apprenticeship. A learner who completed the foundation wouldn't have to then also complete the core, regardless of the 2 trades they selected at foundation. Alternatively, should they not be successful, they may progress onto the progression qualification following the foundation, and then into which is in the chosen trade area, and then hopefully onto the apprenticeship following that. And just note there at the bottom you can see core and apprenticeship. The core is a mirror of the foundation with 1 trade area. So although we call it the core, it's the foundation with 1 trade area. Thanks, Ian. So here we can see future trading and events that we're holding. These are brand new qualifications, and we recommend you take the time to register onto one of the events, especially the CPD events we're holding over the next few months. As you can see, we're holding trade-specific webinars, and regarding the BSc, they're currently being confirmed. So we'll have information for those coming very soon. A little tip, if you can't make it live or you don't think you can make the webinars live, I'd recommend you register anyway, because you'll then get an automatic link following the webinar to the recording and all the follow-up information. So we'd recommend everyone to register for these webinars, and we just hope that you can make it live as well. So there's been a lot of information in this webinar already. We're very conscious there's a lot for you all to take on board. What we'll do, I'll take a brief moment just to let you reflect, have a think, type out all of your questions. And whilst you're having a think about that, I just want to say thank you very much to everyone on the panel. We've got the 2 Jasons who've presented, and Harrod, And also Ian Roberts, and a big shout out to Ian, who does a lot of the planning for these sessions and a lot of the preparation for the slides. And they're all very experienced tutors and all here to help you with these qualifications. So please do tap into the expertise whilst we've got the opportunity and type away your questions. It may be just be thoughts, it may be queries, maybe some pinch points you can potentially see. It may be some feedback on what you're doing currently. It doesn't have to be a question as such, it can just be a statement, and we'll just try and answer and support you with all of those. So I'll just now open up the questions tab. Excellent, we've got quite a few coming through. So how many resits and resubmissions are allowed, please? If I could come to, I think, Ian and Jason Marsland, please.
Yeah, thank you, David. And really good question, this. There's no set limit to how many resits or resubmissions learners can actually take. But I think what we've got to keep in mind is the timings. So obviously the length of the practical project and the time it will take to do. And when you actually look at the resits and resubmissions, if they haven't reached a specific mark that's required to achieve a minimum of a pass, then they can carry out and redo that set section within a 10% margin of that as you move forward. Regarding the online knowledge test, what we have to remember is that it's not as though we're still on the legacy qualifications. And what would actually happen here is, although there's no set limit to the number they can have, we have got to identify the areas that they haven't been successful in, and then retraining has actually got to be taken out to help that learner gain that additional knowledge that they require to be able to move that forward. And again, we've got to be aware they are graded, pass through to distinction, and to award a pass, there's set marks for that. And it is supporting the learner as well on that, is the actual pass mark. So rather than try and keep making the learner go through over and over again just to try and improve the pass mark or the grade that they're going to be awarded, as I say, we have to bear in mind the time that it's going to take to have all these resits move that forward. So yeah, as David says, there's no set limit, but please be aware that additional training would be required to make sure the learner is ready and prepared to resit the online assessment. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. There's a couple of questions around resources, so I'll double back to those in a moment, just to give you, so you can catch your breath, Ian. We've got a question that's similar to the questions we had this morning, really. Why don't you offer a core and one trade area for a student that knows exactly what they want? You are doing this for the apprenticeship model. Same answer as this morning, really. When someone leaves school and gains an apprenticeship, they are already in the trade area, so it seems appropriate that there is the core qualification for those. A learner who may have a desire to go into a trade area but doesn't have an apprenticeship, we want to give them the best experience possible and not pigeonhole them into a single trade, so we can hopefully give them better experience and open up more doors. So it may be that they have an opportunity for an apprenticeship in a related trade that isn't exactly the one that they first wanted when they left school, but they've realised over time and the opportunity has arisen for an alternate trade apprenticeship. So it gives them that greater experience, greater value to that experience, and more opportunities for that learner. So that's one of the benefits of that the current foundation system. But to double back, there's a few queries about the resources. So where are the resources? Do we have links for them? We've got a cost for the resources. Is this true? And again, another question, can we have the link, please? So Jason, there's a couple of aimed around plumbing. Will you be able to start and answer first, and then we'll share it across the panel, please? Jason Marsland.
Yeah, the plumbing resources are being developed with Charlie and Benita, and I think from where there have been some published on the site. I'm not exactly sure where they're exactly up to on that, so Jen, if you may know where Charlie is on that one. I've not been involved with the resources.
No problem. Jason, I believe there are some resources up for progression now. Ian, can you confirm?
Yes, I can. What you'll find on the progression, let me just take a couple of steps back first of all. The contract was, initially on the contract was to produce resources for the foundation qualification only. And the reason this was for is because when you're looking at the progression qualification, it's an immediate map across over to the National Occupational Standards at that particular level. And what they agreed is that the centres would already have resources available for delivering the current structure of qualifications. Bearing that in mind, what we did over and above was produce some unique content mapping documents for you. So there's intros into webinars, and YouTubes and things like that, and we can gain the valuable information to put resources together to be able to help support that. We've also got Enhanced Smart Screen, which in the construction element, what you'll find, the Enhanced Smart Screen is in topic areas, so you can map the topics across, and there is a cost to that, as we're aware. But taking a step further forward now, what's actually happening at the moment is my understanding is that BARC have been asked to put a proposal together, and they're in the process of doing this and submitting this to Qualifications Wales on a costing proposal, so they can actually develop or set people internally within colleges to develop these learning resources. And then obviously, provided that proposal goes through, the costings will be paid through by the Welsh Government, etc., as it works its way through. But as an interim, we've got these unique content sheets that people can use. You've got the textbooks that ODER are on with, the mapping the relevant documents across from the textbooks across to the unique content. There's going to be some gaps, we understand that. And I think that's where Jason's coming from when he says we have our marketing team who are actually looking at developing additional resources to actually support that. Whether it's going to be in PowerPoints, it will not be. There'll be like content sheets to help guide you into where you can find these resources to help support you in that area and in that region. But as I say, BARC are putting a proposal together to submit to QW, Qualifications Wales, and then hopefully that costing will go through, and then college will be able to prepare their own and get paid for that. Then all that content will be shared through accordingly. But as an interim, we've got Enhanced Smart Screen, but there's a cost involved. We all know that. And you've also got your own resources as well that you've been running with for the past few years. I hope that helps and answers your question moving forward. And the links to these are on the Skills for Wales website on the unique content sheets. And we are aware of, well, of course, is that centres, colleges and training providers are more than happy to share their content, which we're more than happy to put onto the website for people to draw down accordingly to be able to move that forward. So I hope that answers your questions.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, it's a really good point that many of the trades haven't really changed. So we've got a lot of support materials already out there and available, presentations. You know, that I imagine when you look at the content, it's just maybe delivered in a slightly different sequence, you know, possibly. But the content itself hasn't really changed to be in any of the trades. So all tutors should have a massive variety of available content for current qualifications, and in the worst case scenario is just adapting to the new. But let's move on because there's plenty of other questions. Would photographs be advised for evidence of assessments? So Jason, how would you like to respond to this, please?
Yes, no problem. Currently, obviously, there is no mandatory requirement for photographs, but like with all assessments, learners photograph them for their own, you know, personal achievements, if you like, and for, you know, justifying grades of assessments. It's always, you know, advantageous to take photographs and identify that as good practice. So we would, obviously, if you've done that previously, encourage that continues to showcase the skills that your learners have been learning during the course of the program that they've been undertaking. So it's not mandatory, but certainly it will be identified as good practice and celebration of learners' skills development.
Thank you very much, Jason. A question here: have current apprentices studying core and MVQ? The MVQ will continue next year, but what do they need to do the progression qualification? So I'm not sure I fully understand the question, because if they're on the MVQ, why would they do the progression? But maybe I've read it wrong. Ian Roberts, would you like to help with that, please?
Yeah, my understanding, I think my understanding is they've right. I presume they've started the learners on the core this year. They've got an apprenticeship and they're starting the core this year. So I'm presuming where they're talking, they're doing their actual NVQ level 2, if I'm correct. And if I am correct, then what they'd have to do is they'd join the level 3 apprenticeship next come September. They'd have to join the level 3 qualification. So what would actually happen is, on that side of things, the learner would achieve their NVQ, but at the same time be working towards the working towards the level 3 apprenticeship. So what would happen is the evidence that they've got for the NVQ would map across to the level 3, and then so they map the evidence from the work-based evidence across to the level 3 employer confirmation guide and continue to move forward accordingly. So them learners on the core this year would continue onto the level 3 apprenticeship. That's what would happen. And then if they're still doing their MVQ, they could still continue to do their MVQ level 2, but obviously it is not part of the level 3 apprenticeship. And that's what they'd have to do. But we're more than happy, if I'm not understanding it correctly, please drop us an email and we'll work you through it, because the transition cannot be changed. The transition that we've gone through on earlier slides, that's what Qualifications Wales are adamant that people have got to follow accordingly. All right, unless of course, if they'd been on the current SASU framework NVQ, they'd have been continuing with the level 2 diploma, and they're not doing so. I'm presuming that's what I'm writing what I'm saying, put it that way. But if it isn't, please let us know, and we're more than happy to contact you afterwards or drop us an email. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Ian. Is the MICC element of the progression practical test for electrotechnical remaining in? Jason, I don't know if you are aware from your colleague, Kevin, if that is a current assessment and will remain.
I believe it's still in at the moment. I know Kevin has been looking at that. And I can't really say any further than that, but at the moment it's still in, but Kevin is reviewing it. It is all I can say on that one, so watch your space on that one.
Yeah, thank you very much. It may be worth dropping an email to one of the email addresses that we share in a little while around that, and it will help remind us to chase that up. We've then got a statement saying the cost is way too much, so I presume that's in reference to material costs. In my experience of the BSc qualifications, there are fewer practical assessments now than in many of the previous ones, so hopefully there's less demand for assessment material in those than previous qualifications, but you may be referring to some of the other qualifications. The progression practical project asks for a trained invigilator during the planning task. Would this be a trained tutor or exams invigilator? Well, one of my colleagues on the panel may correct me, but I believe the planning task, with it being a desk-based activity, at the time that the learner is doing that, the person is an invigilator. You only become an assessor once it's handed in and it is then marked. So the person actually sat there in the controlled environment has to be trained in invigilation. So that could be a tutor, it could be a separate exams trained invigilator. I'm not sure it would really matter. I don't know if my interpretation is correct or if anyone else would like to add anything.
No, I think you've explained that, David, correctly. Thank you.
What about the resources just for the core units across progression? I just refer you back really to Ian's response just before about the development of the supporting material. You know, it's a work in progress. Can the current level 2 students progress onto level 3 qualification? Well, if it's the apprenticeship qualification, yes, all learners, whether they've got a level 2 or not, will go to the level 3 qualification. But it's for apprentices, so they need to be employed. If you're asking about the current VRQ style qualifications, then they're not part of the new suite of qualifications in Wales. So it's expected that in September, the only funded provision are the new suite of qualifications. Will students who are due to complete their level 2 diploma and MVQ this year be able to progress onto the level 3 diploma MVQ, or do they have to go onto the new framework? Probably links into the previous question, really. They move into the new framework as of this September. It's all on the new framework. Any other panel, anything to add?
Yeah, that's correct, David. And what we are doing at the moment, we are looking at putting some mapping documents together so you can see where the current a learner having completed a level 2 framework, moving across to the new level 3 qualification, where where some of the evidence has been mapped directly across, where the gaps are, etc. But yes, you're correct. The learners completing a level 2 framework this year will have to go directly across to the new level 3 qualification and continue. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Another question, will there be any sample exam papers as a guide to developing revision material? Well, there already are plenty of sample papers for the foundation qualifications. Do we know where they're up to on the progression? Anyone?
Yeah, David, the progression ones, the draft assessment material that we put together to have it submitted to get approval from through QW are there for to be able to use as examples if need be. Okay, they're on the website.
Thank you very much. I've just typed out a little response to that also. So we've covered all the questions for now. What I suggest we do then, we do have a couple of more slides. What we'll do is we'll have a look at those last 2 slides, and then we will come back. So please have a think. If there's any more questions you'd like to ask, or if we haven't answered something correctly, or any feedback you want to give, please type those into the questions tab whilst we cover just the last couple of slides. So your feedback, I know we've mentioned it several times already on this webinar and others about how valuable the feedback is. Look out for the survey. I have put the survey links in the chat as well, so you can be doing that now whilst we're on this webinar and get it complete. Please put down on there what you like about the support. That you know, if you like the webinars, if you like face-to-face, would you like to see more of those? How does support look like for you? What we're doing well, what you'd like to see change, what we can improve on. So any feedback really on the qualifications and what support you need as regards delivering those. It really is important for us to hear, and then we can try and adapt and give you the support the learners and yourselves require. The good thing about doing it on the survey and capturing the feedback that way is it's held centrally, and we have to report back and log all of that. So once it's completed on there, it's officially held centrally. We do hold the chats from these if we have to refer to them and the questions, but it's much more formally held if you can complete it on those surveys. So next slide, please, Ian. In addition to that survey that we've shared, just a shout out here for the skillswales.customer@sittingills.com email address. There's various email addresses. If you need further ones or EL ones, we can share those as well. Again, any queries, you can come direct to us, but try and copy in the .customer email addresses as well, because then again, they're centrally held and they're logged, and we keep everything logged. So if there's a bit of feedback, a question, a query, something that's incorrect that we need to fix, please shout out as quick as you can, and we can get onto that as quickly as we can. And if there's things that you like as well, it'd be nice not just to share things you think aren't too great at the moment. If there's things going well, we'd love to hear that as well. We do appreciate anything that we're doing well. If we know we're doing it well, it's easier for us to do more of it. So if you think these are good, please, if you get a chance, drop that on the email as well. It just makes it easier for us to do more of them because we can demonstrate the value to you as the provider network. So we've been on around 50 minutes now. It's officially, I think, an hour this session. So we'll stay on longer if we need to answer everyone's questions. That's fine, but we understand that in 5 or 10 minutes or so, people may start drifting off. So just in case you do, before I drop back onto the questions, just want a big shout out again to everyone on the panel, our friends and colleagues at AEL, Jason Marsland, Jason Howe, Ian Roberts, and Anne Harrod, who has opened up the session for us today. Really great input from all the staff there, and we are very, very grateful for them taking the time to come along and try and answer some of these questions. So please make use of the panel. I'm just going to drop back onto the questions now, and hopefully we've had a couple more. So I just need to scroll down. So have any of you read the PowerPoint supplied for core unit 106 foundation? I believe it's written at a level young construction student understand and can even read. Okay, thanks for that feedback. We'll have a look. Just to give you an idea of how these work in development, the content is written for the qualification. Whenever a consultant then works on creating assessment material, or a different consultant may work on the PowerPoints, a different consultant who's an experienced tutor, we contract with tutors from the delivery network, so these may be people you know. Whenever we contract them for worksheets or anything like that, they're developed in line with the qualification handbook. So if you look at that PowerPoint presentation, 106, and refer to the handbook, the content in the PowerPoint should reflect what is in the handbook. I take on board your point, but imagine if that consultant hadn't written that content in there, and it is a part of the qualification content, and you delivered using that PowerPoint and the information wasn't there, learners are going to be assessed on that content, so they do need it. So if you feel as though there's an issue with the PowerPoint, it's probably that you don't agree with the content in the handbook, because that's where it's come from. But that handbook is now written and accepted as the content for the foundation qualification. So what we can do, or what you can do yourselves, if it improves it, add to those PowerPoints. They're only a base, so it's one consultant's interpretation of the best way to deliver that unit. You may feel as though it's better delivered differently, and we encourage that. We're all experienced tutors, experienced in the trade. We all have our own styles. We all know, your learners better than we do. If you think you can download that PowerPoint, you can add to it, you can spread that slide out, you can change parts of it to make it easier for the learners to understand and to grasp, then we would really recommend that. And if you've got some ideas of how we can improve it, please let us know. We're really open-minded, and we encourage you to share things like that. Thank you for telling us. If you've got some suggestions, we can go back to it, and we can go back to our publications team and ask them to make some updates to it. So continuous CPD, isn't it? We're always trying to continually improve. Like every lesson you deliver, you'll go away and you'll make some tweaks and changes. So if we can do the same, we all benefit from it, don't we? We all benefit. So please, can you supply the web address for the sample book by Hodder? Okay. I don't know if one of my colleagues, whilst I've got the questions open, can go onto the Hodder Education website and just drop a link in. But I usually find it by going into the search engine, put in Hodder Education. That will open up their website, and then you can put in foundation in Wales, construction foundation, or plumbing, brickwork, whichever trade area you're specifically looking for. If you're struggling, Thomas Stotter he works for Hodder, and it's his role to support you finding all the materials that they have. So I would urge you please to contact Thomas Stotter direct. And again, I don't know if one of my colleagues could find his email address and drop
that
it in.
Email address, David, is actually on the presentation that people will receive. It's Thomas's email address.
Okay, that's excellent. That's excellent. I think I've just found it here as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy it.
It's already in the chat.
Oh, right. Okay.
So that's the link to the sample chapter.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So what I'm going to do is I'll drop Thomas's email address in as well against that question. Okay, so just scrolling down and see if there's more questions. If we have accredited for the foundation, do we automatically get accreditation for the progression and the level 3? Ian, would you be able to answer that, please?
Yeah, no, you need to fill an application in for the progression and the level 3 as well, as because the new qualifications, it's something that all colleges have to do. All right, so you need to complete it for the progression as well as the level 3. It's the online. Okay, thank you.
Another reason these are often very useful sessions is, you know, just a little reminder about things like that. We can automatically think that we've done an approval form, therefore we're going to be okay, and then we realise, oh crikey, you know, I'm not sure we've done one for the progression. So if anyone's in that position, please make a note. You might not want to do it now, Friday afternoon, but please make a note Monday morning, and you can maybe get the rest of the approval forms done ASAP. In our experience, yeah.
My advice would be is that they check with their exams department first, just to see, because they may have gone for approval. It'd be unusual for centres not to go for progression at the same time as the foundation. So that probably I've got the progression. It's the level 3 that I believe will be separate, because they can only get approval once they went live, and some centres did not apply for it, although it went live last July. I think it was caught in the annual leave time. Some centres have, but I believe some centres may not have. But they should have got progression already, I would have assumed.
It's a good reminder, really, that some of the tutors, you may not realise that someone in exams or someone else has applied for approval. So it's probably worth a check internal first, just to make sure if you have or you haven't. But probably make a note to check on Monday morning or send an email before you finish, just to double check. If you've not, in our experience, the quicker you do that, the better. We're, you know, commencing with EQA visits on the foundation very soon with support visits. So that the quicker in the system you have that approval, there's just less to do over the summer and panic in getting that done. We're almost up on the hour now, and there's no further questions. So we'll just keep open just for a couple of minutes. Unless we get an influx of questions, we'll remain on, but if not, we will look to close in a couple of minutes. So any final thoughts or questions, please do type away. If there's anything we've not answered and we need to take away because we've not been able to, or we've misunderstood, please let us know, type away, and we'll take that with us. Or drop it on the survey, or email the Skills for Wales email address that we shared just before. There's various ways that you can keep in touch. So before we close, and whilst people are thinking of final questions, just like to ask the panel, is there anything else that you feel as though we could update people on, or we may have missed?
Just a gentle reminder that please register for the webinars, up and coming webinars, if you haven't already done so, for the level 3s. And also, which is crucial, if we're in your area doing these CPD events, please take the effort to make the effort to join us. And the first one's at College Cambria, which is next week, and then we move down to Cardiff and Vale College, and then we start moving further across to South Wales. So over the next few weeks, please make sure you attend whatever you possibly can. So thank you on my behalf. Thank you.
Yeah, I think just one thing I'd like to say is just, we do these webinars and things like that to keep in touch with you. But please, if you have any queries before, you know, during the times anything else comes up, please get in touch with us. We're here to help. We want to give you as much support as we can. So, you know, use us as a resource, phone us up, ask the questions. You know, there's no daft questions. We want to help you and make this as successful as we possibly can for everybody. And that's it really, David. Thank you.
No, thank you. So yeah, big thanks to everyone who attended today. We hope you found it very useful. As Jason said very well, just you know, it's your time to try and keep in touch with you, but it's not your only time that you have access to us. So please stay in touch. We appreciate you taking time out on a Friday afternoon to listen to us. We hope you found it useful. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a great evening and a nice weekend, and we look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you very much, everyone. Goodbye.